Sometimes love isn't loud. It's silent glances, unspoken words, and the fear of losing something that hasn't even begun. You both feel it, but neither of you dares to admit it. It often begins quietly, a simple glance, a small smile, a conversation that lingers longer than it should. There's no dramatic spark, no instant realization that you've met someone extraordinary, just a slow, almost invisible unfolding. But beneath that calm surface, something powerful starts to stir. You start to feel a connection that doesn't make sense. It's too familiar for someone you've just met, too intense for something undefined. And that's when fear begins to seep in. Not the kind that makes you run away instantly, but the kind that whispers in the back of your mind, what if I lose control? What if this person sees too much of me? Fear in love doesn't always come from past heartbreak. Sometimes it's born from the quiet terror of being truly seen. When you meet someone who makes you feel understood without explanation, it awakens parts of you you've kept hidden. Your softness, your uncertainty, your secret longing to be accepted without conditions. That connection starts to strip away your defenses. And when you've spent years building walls to protect yourself, that kind of vulnerability feels almost dangerous. You begin to question everything. Do they feel it too? Should I step closer or pull away? You replay every interaction in your head, analyzing what was said and unsaid, afraid that one wrong move might expose the depth of what you feel. The fear beneath the connection isn't just about rejection, it's about exposure. It's the realization that this person might have the power to hurt you in ways no one else could. Because they don't just touch your emotions, they touch your core. You feel safe with them, but that safety feels unstable, like standing on the edge of something infinite. You want to fall into it, yet you hesitate, because falling means surrendering the illusion of control. Love, after all, isn't logical. It's vulnerable, raw, unpredictable. And for two people who have learned to rely on self-protection, that can feel terrifying. So you start to hold back. You smile but don't say everything you want to say. You check your phone but don't text first. You convince yourself that keeping distance is safer, that protecting your heart is wiser. But deep down, you know you're not avoiding them, you're avoiding yourself. Because love reveals who you are beneath your defenses, and sometimes facing your own depth is scarier than facing rejection. The fear becomes a silent third presence in every conversation, every pause, every lingering glance. It's there when you laugh together, when your hands brush, when you almost confess what's really on your mind, but stop yourself at the last second. And the most complicated part is knowing that they feel it too. You see the same hesitation in their eyes, the same flicker of confusion and longing. They want to reach out, but they're just as afraid. It's not that they don't care. It's that they care too much. You both do. So instead of confessing, you stay quiet. Instead of moving forward, you circle around each other, waiting for a moment that feels safe enough to let go. But the truth is, no such moment ever really comes, because love that awakens your soul will always feel a little bit terrifying, and the more real it becomes, the harder it is to pretend you're not already falling. There's a kind of closeness that doesn't need to be defined, a connection that lives in the quiet space between friendship and something more. It's when you talk for hours, not about grand things, but about the small details that no one else seems to notice. Your strange thoughts, your half-forgotten memories, the feelings you usually keep hidden. You both open up so effortlessly that it doesn't even feel like vulnerability anymore. It feels natural, safe, like coming home to a person you didn't know you were missing. And yet, even in that comfort, there's confusion, because deep down, you both know this isn't just friendship, but neither of you dares to name it. The moment you give it a label, it might change, and that's what terrifies you most, losing something so rare to the weight of definition. This kind of emotional intimacy feels intoxicating because it offers freedom. You can be honest without fear of judgment. You can share your thoughts, your insecurities, your late night doubts, and somehow they just get it. They don't fix you. They don't analyze you. They just listen. And in that listening, they hold a part of you that no one else ever has. There's no pressure to impress, no need to pretend. You're not trying to win them over. You're simply being yourself, and that in itself feels revolutionary. But the more you open up, the more you realize how entangled your emotions have become. You start to crave their presence, their words, their understanding. You start to miss them in ways that friendships aren't supposed to make you miss someone. And still, you stay silent because putting it into words might make it real. And once it's real, it can be lost. There's a tension that builds in this in-between space. Every conversation feels like walking a fine line between emotional connection and romantic attachment. You find yourself reading between the lines, wondering what they mean when they say they care about you, when they ask about your day, when they remember something you said weeks ago. The uncertainty is both thrilling and painful. It keeps you on edge, wanting more, but afraid to reach for it. You tell yourself you're fine with the way things are, that this undefined bond is enough, but a part of you aches for clarity. You want to know if they feel the same intensity you do, if they think of you when you're not around, if they too lie awake replaying conversations in their head. And yet neither of you asks, because labels bring expectations, and expectations bring the risk of disappointment. So you both continue this silent dance, close enough to feel something real, distant enough to protect it from breaking. You start to recognize how emotional intimacy can be more powerful than physical closeness, how sharing your truth with someone can bind you more deeply than touch ever could. There's beauty in it, but also a quiet sadness, because you both sense that you're building something fragile, something that exists outside the world's definitions, but feels truer than most relationships ever do. You don't call it love, you don't call it friendship, it's simply you and them, suspended in a space where words can't quite reach. There comes a point in life when the heart learns to protect itself, not out of bitterness, but out of survival. After being hurt, disappointed, or misunderstood one too many times, you start to move differently. You start to calculate what used to come naturally. You think twice before opening up, before trusting, before allowing someone too close. You tell yourself you're just being careful, that you're learning from your past. But deep down, you know it's not just caution, it's fear wearing the mask of wisdom. Protecting the heart becomes a quiet art, one that no one teaches you, but everyone eventually learns. You build walls not out of stone, but out of experience. You tell jokes when you want to cry. You stay silent when you want to speak, and you smile when you want to confess how much something actually hurts. Because vulnerability, once betrayed, becomes the scariest thing in the world. When you meet someone who stirs something inside you again, your first instinct isn't to lean in, it's to step back. It's almost automatic. You feel the warmth of connection begin to grow, and immediately a voice inside whispers, "Be careful." You start to analyze every word they say, every gesture, every inconsistency. You look for warning signs, not because you want to find them, but because you're afraid not to. You convince yourself that you're being smart, that you're in control, that you won't let anyone catch you off guard again. But the truth is, you're not protecting your heart from people. You're protecting it from pain. You're afraid of reopening old wounds, of reliving old stories, of proving to yourself that love always ends the same way. So you build boundaries that are just high enough to keep you safe, but low enough to still let some light in. You text back, but not too fast. You share things about yourself, but only the safe parts. You act like you're open, but you're always watching for the moment when things start to feel too real. The irony is that while you're protecting yourself from heartbreak, you're also keeping out the very thing you crave most: connection. Because love, by nature, requires exposure. It asks you to be seen, to be vulnerable, to risk being misunderstood or even hurt. But when your heart has been through enough, it forgets that risk and pain are part of what make love meaningful. It starts to believe that safety is more important than intimacy, and that's when self-protection becomes self-sabotage. Sometimes you meet someone who makes you want to lower those walls, but you can't, not all at once. You want to trust them, but your heart has its own memory, its own reflex. It remembers what it felt like to give everything and lose it. It remembers the sleepless nights, the unanswered messages, the slow fading of something that once felt infinite. So even when someone new shows up with gentle hands and honest eyes, your heart hesitates. It says, not yet, not again, not this easily. You start to test their patience without realizing it, pulling away to see if they'll follow, hiding your emotions to see if they'll notice. You're not trying to play games. You're trying to protect what's left of your hope. Because when you've had your heart broken, hope becomes the most fragile thing you own. And letting someone close enough to touch it feels like the ultimate risk. There are moments between two people when words become unnecessary, when silence itself starts to speak louder than any conversation ever could. It's in the way your eyes meet across a crowded room and hold just long enough to make your heart race. It's in the pause before one of you speaks, the slight hesitation that says, I feel it too, but I don't know how to say it. Unspoken communication isn't something you plan. It just happens. It's born from a kind of understanding that doesn't rely on logic, but on energy, the invisible exchange of emotion that passes between two souls who recognize each other. You can't explain it to anyone else because it doesn't exist in the physical world. It lives in the subtle gestures, the shared looks, the quiet awareness that something deeper is happening beneath the surface. It's in the way they look at you when they think you're not paying attention, the softness in their expression that disappears the second you catch them staring. It's the way their tone changes when they say your name, or how their voice seems to calm when you're around. There are sentences in their silences, meanings in their smallest actions. You start to notice patterns, how they lean closer when they laugh, how they find excuses to stay near, how their body language mirrors yours without either of you realizing it. These are not coincidences. They're signs of alignment, the subconscious way your energies intertwine. And once you notice it, it becomes impossible to ignore. Every glance, every gesture feels charged with meaning. You start reading each other without needing to ask questions, and that's where both the beauty and the confusion begin. Because unspoken communication is both comforting and cruel. Comforting because it makes you feel seen in a way words never could. You start to rely on those subtle cues, those quiet signals that tell you they care, even when they don't say it outright. But it's also cruel because the same silence that connects you can also separate you. You begin to wonder if you're imagining it, if the emotions you feel are mutual, or if you've just projected your own hopes onto moments that were never meant to mean that much. You find yourself trapped between what's said and what's felt, between what you know and what you can't confirm. Still, something keeps you there. You keep responding to the energy, to the rhythm of something invisible but real. You notice when their eyes look tired, when their smile doesn't reach their eyes, when they hesitate before saying goodbye. And you respond, not with words, but with presence. A reassuring glance, a small smile, a moment of silence that says, I understand. You start to realize that real connection isn't always about how much you talk, but how deeply you feel without speaking. You communicate through pauses, through the way your bodies unconsciously synchronize, through the quiet moments that linger long after you've walked away. This is the language of souls, fragile, powerful, and beyond translation. There are times in life when you meet someone who feels right but arrives wrong. Everything about them feels aligned. Their energy, their presence, the way they understand you without needing much explanation. And yet, something about the timing is off. Maybe you're still healing from something that broke you. Maybe they're still figuring themselves out. Maybe the universe brings you together not to stay, but to show you what's possible. Timing has a strange power over love. It decides when hearts collide and when they have to drift apart. It's that invisible force that determines whether two people are ready to meet, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Because sometimes love isn't about who is right for you. It's about when they're right for you. When the timing isn't right, even the strongest connection can feel impossible. You can see the potential, you can feel the depth, but something keeps getting in the way. Distance, circumstance, fear, or unfinished stories from the past. You try to make it work, to bend reality around your emotions, but timing has a way of reminding you that love cannot be forced. You can't rush someone's readiness, and you can't delay your own growth for the sake of a connection. The heart may want what it wants, but life moves according to its own rhythm. And when you fall for someone at the wrong time, it doesn't make the love less real. It just makes it more complicated. You find yourself constantly torn between what feels right and what makes sense, between holding on and letting go. There's a kind of ache that comes from meeting the right person too soon, when you're still learning how to be whole on your own. You see in them everything you've ever wanted, but you also see the version of yourself that's not quite ready to receive it. You realize that love demands presence, not potential, that to truly meet someone, you both have to be standing in the same emotional place. But when you're still healing, you can't meet them fully. You can only meet them halfway. So you tell yourself it's better to wait, to focus on becoming who you need to be before you can love without fear. Still, that doesn't stop the longing. The heart remembers what the mind tries to reason away. And no matter how hard you try, you can't unfeel what you felt. And sometimes the reverse happens. You finally reach a place of peace only to find that the person who once could have been everything is no longer available, emotionally or even physically. They've moved on, or they've changed, or maybe they've built the same kind of walls you once did. And in that moment, you realize how fragile timing truly is. It's not cruel, but it's not merciful either. It simply is. It teaches you that love isn't always about possession. Sometimes it's about recognition. You can meet someone who mirrors your soul, but if the timing doesn't align, all you can do is appreciate the connection for what it was. A reminder that love, in its purest form, is not always meant to be captured, only experienced. There comes a moment when you realize that protecting your heart has also meant limiting it. You've spent so long avoiding pain, avoiding risk, avoiding the uncertainty that comes with love, that you've built your life around comfort, the comfort of control, of solitude, of never being disappointed again. But comfort, as safe as it feels, slowly becomes a cage. It keeps you warm, but it keeps you still. You stop reaching for things that make your soul come alive. You stop letting people in. You start mistaking peace for numbness and convince yourself that being unbothered is the same as being healed. Yet deep inside, there's a quiet longing, the ache to feel again, to try again, to believe that maybe this time it won't end the same way. That's where courage comes in, because love, real love, always demands it. It asks you to risk your comfort for the chance at something deeper. Choosing courage over comfort means being willing to step into uncertainty, to open your heart even when it trembles. It's not about pretending you're fearless. It's about acknowledging the fear and still choosing to move toward what scares you. It's texting first, even when your pride tells you not to. It's expressing how you feel, even when you're not sure how they'll respond. It's letting someone see the unfiltered version of you, the one with doubts, insecurities, and all the little imperfections you've tried to hide. Courage doesn't guarantee a happy ending, but it guarantees authenticity. And that's something comfort can never offer, because comfort keeps you in familiar patterns while courage breaks them. Comfort says, stay safe. Courage whispers, grow anyway. When two people are afraid to love each other, it's usually not because they don't feel enough. It's because they feel too much. They sense the weight of what this could become, and it terrifies them. So they retreat into safety, into silence, into distance, into pretending that what they have isn't what it truly is. But that's where love quietly starts to fade, not because the feelings disappear, but because fear overpowers expression. Every maybe later, every I'll tell them someday becomes another way of choosing comfort over truth. And the tragedy of it is that both people are waiting for the other to be brave first. Courage in love doesn't always look grand. Sometimes it's subtle. It's staying when you want to run. It's apologizing when ego tells you to defend yourself. It's allowing yourself to be loved even when you don't feel worthy. It's choosing to believe that this connection, fragile as it may be, deserves a real chance. And it's in those small, trembling acts of bravery that love begins to take shape. Because love is not found in comfort. It's born in the moments we choose to step beyond it. It grows in the space between fear and faith, where two people decide that the risk of getting hurt is worth the beauty of being known.